Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am Amber from Amber's Books and More, and today I have my Top 5 Wednesday. So the topic for this week are the top 5 books that you think will become classics in the future. I definitely was excited to really give this one a lot of thought. I'm glad that they put it at the end of the month. I've been doing quite a bit of research on what makes a book a classic, and I did find an article about like the top 11 reasons a book becomes a classic that a lot of other research websites actually refer to, so I will leave that link down below so you can check that out. I will only be referring to that for a couple of these books, but I'm excited to tell you exactly the reason why I think these 5 books will become classics. Alright, so the first one I have is a book that I think really changed the game a little bit with thrillers, and it was one that went on to make a hugely successful movie with A-list actors, and it took everybody by surprise. And this is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. And so this was a really good book, and I think that the reason that it will be a classic is, like I said, it really changed the way that people look at thrillers, and it kind of brought in a whole new wave of unreliable narrators and people that aren't exactly what they seem. And I definitely think that, 100 years in the future, people are still going to be referring to this one in the same way that we still refer to a lot of our classics that we look at. Alright, so the next one I have is actually inspired by part of that article, and in part of the article it says that one way that a book becomes a classic is that it sparks some kind of controversy where it has people that really rally against it, and it has all this controversy attached to it. And I think that that's definitely true, because if you look at some of the ones that we do look at classics, they really made people kind of crazy. The one that I picked for this is his Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman. I actually talked about this trilogy before, and so I've finally pulled it down off my bookshelf, off the top of it, so that I can kind of show you guys. So the first book being The Golden Compass. I believe that this is called The Northern Lights in the UK and in other places, and this is just a really cool, I think these are really cool covers. The second book being The Subtle Knife. And then the third book in the series is called The Amber Spyglass. And so these really pushed a lot of controversy, and they made, an A-list movie on The Golden Compass, and it had really bad reviews, and I liked it. I think that it did change too much from the book to really, and I think that's why it probably didn't get as good of reviews, but the controversy is there's a lot of people that look at this as a anti-Christian attack against God because the author is an atheist, and I didn't read it that way. I definitely think that this one is a hit and miss for people, but I do think that this is one that people many more years in the future will dissect and try to find all of the symbolism and all these things that you do whenever you read classics for school. And so I definitely think that for that reason that these will become like a classic trilogy. So number 3 is in the article as well. He says that there's basically a book that is so different and so unique and very creative and just, it changes things. And so I think for that one I'm going to go with the Illuminae files, Illuminae and Gemini, and then whatever the next book might be, because these really changed the game for sci-fi, and it made people interested in sci-fi that never read sci-fi before, because it is, the mixed media, and it shows it in different kinds of formats. And I think that this really changes the way people perceive sci-fi, and I think that it's bringing about a whole new wave of love for sci-fi, and so I think definitely this one is going to go down in history as a classic. Alright, so number 2 is actually was inspired by the article as well, and so the very number 1 on the article is that a classic is a book that you hear people say, I'm rereading blank book, more than you hear people say I am reading. So in other words, so many people have read it and so many people have loved it that people just keep rereading it because it's so good. And so there's no other book that I can think of that would fit that bill more than Harry Potter. So Harry Potter is definitely a long series, and it has inspired so many more books and movies and just all kinds of things, but I definitely think that it defined a generation, and I don't know very many people in the book world that do read that have not read Harry Potter, and I know so many people that read because of Harry Potter. It brought young adult back on the scene. It brought middle grade back on the scene. It brought magic back in our world. And I think that I can't say, because, you know, Harry Potter came out when I was in my 20s, so I can't say that I read because of this or that I am a reader because of this, but it definitely changed the way that I look at books. I never would have read a young adult book. I never would have read a middle grade book before these, and I definitely do now. I love them now, and I realized that, you know, the stigma against young adult and middle grade is not there for a reason. It's just in our heads, and there's no reason not to read them. So definitely these are gonna be a classic. I mean, in 100 years, there'll still be people rereading Harry Potter, I think, because it's just that phenomenally large of a fan base, honestly. People that read them as kids will read them to their kids, and so on and so forth. So definitely a classic. So number one book that I think will be a classic is a book that I just recently read, very recently actually. I just finished it yesterday, and as soon as I read it, the other books that I had on this list just were pushed aside, because this book was heartbreaking, and it's, oh my gosh, let me just say, it is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas. And so I think that it is really important for us to have books that really shine a light on America in a way that we ignored before. So I have this book here. This is 12 Years a Slave by Solomon Northup. And the way that this book became a classic, because slavery was apparently over, and people thought, oh, slavery's over, life is great for black people, it's no big deal. And when you know, he became a slave for 12 years, and he wrote this memoir with the help of a friend of his, because he couldn't write because he had never been educated in that way. He broke open slavery, and it's still happening. People are being stolen into slavery, and I think that in that same vein, The Hate You Give is going to be a classic in that same way. So it basically, people now, slavery's been over for so long that they think that everything's great and everyone's equal. But you know, within the last probably 10 years, we've seen so many things happen, like unarmed black kids getting shot by cops, and all these things happening because the racism is still there, and it's still prevalent. And even if, you know, as a white person, I don't necessarily see it as much, but I do see it sometimes, you know, because I live in Irving, Texas, and Irving, Texas is a literal mashup of all different races, and I love it for that, because I don't want to live in a place that's not diverse and that I don't get to see many different faces. And so whenever I read the book, or actually listened to it on audiobook, which is why I don't have a copy of it, but it really brought home what these black kids are going through, and seeing their fellow friends and their fellow black people getting shot unarmed. And, you know, I don't want to give anything away in the book, because I will be putting out a very spoilery review of this pretty soon, or it may have already gone up. If it has, I'll leave it linked up above. But it's important, and it's going to go down in history. It is going to be taught in schools immediately, I think. I don't think people are going to wait. I think that immediately this is going to be considered a classic today. And it's emotional, but it is so wonderfully written that everybody should read it. And I think that even people that don't read need to read it or listen to an audiobook. And I guarantee you there will be a movie going up about this. I guarantee you someone is quickly going to jump on that train and get a movie going, because it is such a good story, and it is so important and so emotional, and it was a story that needed to be told. And I'm so glad that Angie Thomas had the guts and the courage and the writing ability to tell that story. But definitely, number one, will go down in history, most important read of my entire life up to this point. And I will not look at the world the same after this book. I even look outside and I see things differently. And I think that is a great thing to say. That's the best thing you can say about a book. And to a writer, your book changed my life. That is such a strong statement, you know, and I'm not afraid to say it, because racism needs to be stopped. People need to stop treating people differently, because we're not different. We're all humans. And I see my review if you want to hear more of my thoughts, because I can't get into it. This video will go on way too long, but number one, definitely. All right, so that was my top 5 Wednesday, my last one for the month of March. The list will soon be going up for April. Hopefully there will be a few that I wanted to do for there. I think I did 3 out of 5 for March, and so I'm really proud of myself for that. But definitely check out all my information below. Check out any reviews for any of these books that I've put up. And yeah, have a nice day wherever you are. Keep reading because it's important. They will become classics one day. I love you. Bye.